Hello, my friends. It's yes and me. It seems our lives are never gonna be the same. I close my eyes. It's a confusing place. And tears of joy stream down my face.
Welcome back to I Shaved My Vag for This, where we say out loud everything that goes unsaid. I shaved my vag for this. I'm Katie Thompson, and you're probably wondering what the fuck is going on here. So what better time than to walk right on into the world of mental health, toward a beautiful new intersection between Mother Nature and science, one that is now becoming medically endorsed and forming a perfect union in the form of psychedelics. Psychedelic Assisted Therapy, to be exact. And it comes in the form of mushrooms, LSD, MDMA, Peyote, and apparently toads. I personally am fascinated by this subject. It makes me a little scared and kind of nervous, excited, which means I'm on the right path. Honestly, when I feel this the most is when I think about what a trip would be like for me. And I imagine it's like some forest bathing situation where I'm in a denim tuxedo and I all of a sudden morph into an alt-rock 2000s band lead singer with a Creed voice box. And that's something that you just saw at the beginning of this episode, and luckily, you're still here, but this is actually your fault. You've enabled me. Anyways, that's why data and scientific intervention are helpful in these moments. Now we are actually in a time where physicians, researchers, scientists have all proven that psychedelic assisted therapy is actually more effective for treating severe PTSD, trauma, depression, more so even than traditional methods like SSRIs, talk therapy. The reason we're able to have a qualified conversation about this topic is because we have a brave and brilliant guest joining us who is sharing her personal experience with supervised psychedelics, one that has transformed her life in the most incredible ways. She's a globally renowned executive in the hospitality industry and founder of Box and Flow, which is a hybrid yoga boxing studio concept based in New York City. Today, she's going to share her story of total transformation through the use of supervised psychedelics. All right, everyone. Give it up for our brilliant, badass, and truth-seeking guest today, Olivia Young. I shaved my vag for this. Before we jump in, your safety and your health matter to me. Please note this episode contains themes that may be triggering, including discussions of PTSD, experimental drug use, and experiences that involve sexual trauma and abuse. Please refer to the episode description for a list of resources and supplemental material. Take care of yourself, and let's take care of one another. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for
I'm so glad you're here. Olivia is here to share more about her journey in experimenting with what we would call therapeutic molecules. Tell us how you even decided to start this for people that are wanting to explore. What's your story?
So to distill it, this idea of plant medicine or psychedelics for therapy. Ironically, I'd never really done a recreational drug before except smoke some weed in college. And I was in the dead of the pandemic, right? So figure August, September 2020. Everything in my life felt stuck. So I started a fitness concept called Box and Flow, a boxing yoga hybrid in New York City. I owned studios. The premise was facing your fight to find your flow and achieving this balance through duality of dark and light. And the doors of my studios said everything you need is inside. And there were no mirrors in the spaces. So it was really about facing the fight within. And yet studios were closed and so was I. I was completely shut down and I was really teaching what I needed to learn. But, the business was stuck. My body was stuck. I was actually getting a colonic when the hydrotherapist, she said to me, well, I do this thing, this bufo, this toad thing. And I looked at her like, whatever, okay, you're weird.
Toad thing as she's cleaning out.
Yes. And she was just and she's like, it's so easy. You're it's 20 minutes.
Lady, don't put that up there.
No, but at the same time, it was they say the medicine calls you when you're ready. Nothing was working. And on the outside, my life looked, pretty easy peasy, professional, privileged. had built a big business, had spent 7 years, working with celebrity chefs, traveling around the world as brand director of this global conglomerate. But inside, I just was in pain. And because it was my norm, I didn't understand the intensity of the pain I was feeling, the anxiety, the depression. I quelled it through, waking up at 5 a.m. and running 5 miles and going to yoga and boxing. Like, movement was my therapy. But I wasn't getting anywhere. I was running myself to the ground and not getting anywhere. So getting a colonic, woman says toad. And for the first time, I was
Natural gateway.
Literally, I was just like, whatever it is, like, just tell me how to get there.
Wow.
And I had heard about it before, like a year prior. I was having dinner, the best meal I've ever had in my life, at this Korean omakase in the Flatiron district. It has like multi Michelin stars, with this very sexy chef like making out at this omakase table with like all these other people. We're just like sucking face, and he's talking about crystallized toad venom, and I'm like, whatever, dude.
You're like, yeah, just
whatever.
make out with me,
right? And it was just like, it went completely over my head. But then a year passed, and this was brought to my attention, and I should mention, brought to my attention in a time when, as I said, everything was shut down, and I was dating this man, and he was involved in this medicine work and nonprofit. And the first time we were intimate, he said to me, "Did something happen to you?" And I was like, "What?" And I also was like, "What do you mean? Women feel so much pressure. I wasn't ready. I told you I wasn't ready." But
was there a trigger inside? Like, what was the signal in your body?
I completely
that
dissociated.
Wow.
So we had sex. I completely dissociated, and I didn't know I dissociated. Like, I didn't know what dissociation was.
Got it.
I was 30, and I was 33 years old at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's almost as if you had no memory of the experience, or you just became separate from the experience.
And in like his acknowledgement of that, it was an experience I had become separate from almost every single time I was in that experience.
Wow. I mean, it's a bold question for him to ask, but thankfully you were in a place to hear it.
The irony of all of it too, like this man was someone I didn't really want to date, and he convinced, it was like there was a lot of manipulation involved, but there was it was as if something was like guiding me to just keep moving through this, because it was leading me to the answers I didn't know I had questions to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so powerful.
I mean, when I think about it now, it's so fucking wild.
Yeah.
So I'm like getting, my colon clean, my body's stuck, everything's frozen, that, part of this process. And the woman gives me, Cassie, she gives me a business card of the shaman. And she's like, he's never in town, but like, whatever, give it a try. And I was like, okay.
Love a good challenge.
Totally. So I go home, I put the card on my coffee table. I'm like, toad, boof, whatever this is. And I text him, and he texts right back, and he's like, I just got back from sabbatical from 5 months. Are you in town this weekend?
Wow.
And something in me just said, say yes.
I mean, at that point, you don't have time to think, and that's maybe the biggest blessing,
Completely.
You don't overanalyze, just go. And so what was the first experience like?
So for context, Bufo, it's called 5-MeO-DMT, and it is made from the crystallized sap of this specific Sonoran toad. And it's called the God molecule.
Wow.
So what it is, it's a 20-minute psychoactive experience. You smoke it and you die. To the extent that Mike Tyson talks about this a lot, but to even give it more credit, Tony Robbins said that he was seeking something so that he could understand what his terminally ill cancer patients feel before they die, so he could relate to them. And he smoked 5-MeO-DMT.
And so he set that intent prior to, and then
that
was able to travel.
Well, that and this particular 5-MeO-DMT, it gives you the death experience. So when I smoked it, I showed up at the Chelsea Hotel, if you're familiar with New York City. And at the time it was under construction. So literally like Dexter, like white canvas all over the halls, scary.
Yes.
So
like
scary.
A mental institution in
Completely.
a way. Yeah.
And I just walked in, and I had to wait a little because there was someone, before me. The guy that walked out before me looked all out of sorts. Days prior, I just kept getting vivid imagery of Joaquin Phoenix. No reason. Show up. Shaman John is a spitting image of Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin, if you're listening, just tell us now. It's a cool side gig.
It's a cool side gig.
Saving lives.
He has a big dog. Yeah. And I just kind of, like you said, I didn't have time to think about it. It wasn't something to think about. And I also want to preface this. This is not for everybody. And this particular toad venom, it is the last thing I would do, not the first.
Okay, so that's helpful context, right? Because there is a spectrum.
Completely.
So it sounds like you decided to start with the most extreme, which, what a badass.
That, and you know what?
Incredible.
Thank you. And for me, it's like par for the course, even though this course is crazy. But like, I signed my first lease of my first fitness studio before ever teaching a class. Like, if you give me a bib, I'll run the marathon, because I again, like, my life was preparing me for this moment, as I believe all of our lives are. But, you know, I trained my whole life for this. I had shown up, you know, to face a heavy bag for, you know, 10, 15 years prior every day to face my internal fight. And when I was finally given an opportunity, or, you know, the next way forward to access this part of me that I'd shut down, I just showed up.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so when he saw you and you were ushered in, tell us what happened next. Walk us through the process of ingesting this molecule and
picture this. Janis Joplin's old apartment in the Chelsea Hotel, September 5th, 2020.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And gray V-neck American Apparel t-shirt, like bike shorts, and like a big Gucci tote. And I blew out my hair because I figured, you know, I wanted to show up for the toad if he was going to show up for me.
And the hair better look nice.
This is like, you better work.
Yes.
When I walked in, it was like dark, and there was an assistant there named Patrick, and I don't know why I felt safe, but I felt safe. And going to smoke some crystallized toad that is going to give you an ego death with two strange men, like, nothing around that makes sense. And yet, this is where like divinity comes in. It was like I was led there. I was held there. And it is a 20-minute psychoactive experience, as opposed to an ayahuasca, which is, you know, 5 hours, multiple nights, or, you know, 8 hours, whatever. But it also has the active ingredient in 5-MeO-DMT is the same ingredient as ayahuasca.
Okay.
And what DMT does is it secretes the same molecule your brain secretes before you die.
Oh my gosh.
Ego death.
Okay. And so it's a more concentrated, perhaps, form of ayahuasca, and then it's more controlled because it's within a certain time frame.
Yes.
Okay.
So walk in, hello, pleasantries, no ask about money exchange, anything like that. Share intention, and then I'm given a prayer and instructions. There's pillows behind you, and you're meant to start on your knees. So when you smoke it and it hits, you fall back in these pillows and you're supported. And it is almost this trust fall. Just realizing that. Wow. So I'm reading this prayer, and as I'm reading, I don't even get like halfway through it, and I get some sort of like imagery from my bat mitzvah, which is strange. Maybe that was the last time I read a prayer. I don't know. And I just start to hysterically cry. It's already happening. It's like I'm like in pieces.
Wow.
And I tell him, I'm like, I don't smoke anything, you know, so whatever. And he gives, you know, he's holding this thing for me in a pipe, and I start to smoke and I start to cough. And he's like, take some more. And he starts to cough. And then all of a sudden, everything goes dark, and the only way I can explain it is like, you know, the light bulb when you hear like when it goes on and off, like
the flickering.
Yeah.
And it's almost static.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But like the lights out, it was like lights out, and everything went lights out.
And so at that point, you're also removed from your body in a sense, right? So there's nothing you can regain control over.
It's something that's so hard to describe. And the only thing I can maybe describe it as is just like you leave this plane. I went directly into time frames with people from my past, with faces and places that were like so close to me. It's also this chakra clearing. So I felt my energy centers, like all of them. And this near death, like it wants to clear out all of the old to make space for whatever, you know, make space for more love, more life, more vibrancy, more life. Yeah. And so I traveled through time and also like specific memories, specific people, so much emotion, crying, laughing. It felt like hours and it was 20 minutes.
Wow.
And yet it was a lifetime.
And so you were able to revisit your own life in your own body and to witness it in a more objective, maybe higher perspective, like from a higher perspective.
Yes and no.
Okay.
The issue was because it was so quick and I had no context. So I walked into this space to surrender, to see what was keeping me stuck. I didn't have any recollection of my life. So the memories that it fed me, the grief of my grandmother's death, the sadness that my older brother and I aren't like best friends like we were when we were 4, faces of people so close to my body. Why were they there? It fed me a lot of memory, but no context around the memory. So it didn't show me what happened with these people because, yeah, it was 20 minutes. It sort of just brought to surface, like, I haven't thought about that person and I blacked that person out of my life. Like, what is this?
Essentially what's unsorted.
Right.
That's been shoved away.
Exactly. And it was served unsorted because there wasn't enough time to sort it. It was 20 minutes.
And is that the intent behind going for that molecule? Like, is it an expectation that you will be served something unsorted that you then need to kind of, once you return back to present day, start really looking at?
I think because I had no context and my intention was reconnect me to my body and open my heart, which is pretty vague when like these are big things to work with. And like I marched up 7th Avenue in my like Gucci tote and
the blowout was on point.
Exactly. To go meet like the maker. And so is the point to show you all of these things to then go sort? Maybe if you're starting there. Mm-hmm. But because if you're listening to this, I would never start where I did. I don't think so. But it was perfect for me because what I needed was to break through this armor that was protecting me, to leave me with enough curiosity to then go on a journey to understand what all of this meant.
And so from that point, what comes next? Because this is a return back to the stories that we hear, right? So-and-so's, husband went and did this retreat and then he shaved his head and came back and left everyone, And so that's kind of what has tainted, I think, this methodology or the use of this, which has far more pros than cons and is now scientifically backed for being a really healthy way to treat trauma and PTSD. So, and you're living proof of that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't want to say everything comes to intention, but it comes back to, I believe, integrity. Like I started doing plant medicine, as I said, 2020, almost 4 years ago, with no context of any trauma, with a lot of question marks in my life that I'd never questioned because I lived this, cushy life. And yet I was type A and building a business and doing all these, things to prove myself worthy. Mm-hmm. Never asked why I felt unworthy. But what I also was doing since I was 15 was practicing yoga and completely committed to self-discovery and self-improvement. So there's something that Tucker Max, who's a writer, coined as the pre-integration. So integration is, after you figure out all this stuff, any therapy, anything you do, any vacation, you integrate it after, right?
Right.
The pre-integration is actually all the work you do before. And so I'd been working on understanding myself, committed to the extent that like I repel a lot of people because I'm very deep and I tend to attract people who want to drop in quickly and repel people who are afraid of those questions.
Right.
And I've always been this way.
And better to weed them out early because the waters run deep.
Exactly.
I'm not afraid. So
right. No.
That's why it worked out.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I had worked on myself enough to the point where like I had prepared for this.
Right. And you had an openness almost that you kind of were accessing, maybe unknowingly.
That and like going back to the spiritual perspective, crystallized toad venom, ayahuasca that is made from, a specific vine and leaf of a certain tree, psilocybin mushrooms. These are from Mother Earth. They're from Pachamama. There is nothing lab grown in these particular plant substances. There are, MDMA is synthetic, ketamine is synthetic, but when you're ingesting something from the earth that takes you into a new dimension, you have to have an element of trust that you are held, supported, guided, and open to whatever you're being served.
100%.
And so people talk about a bad journey or what happens with the husband shaves his head, shaves his balls, leaves the family, whatever. Like,
Yeah, it could have been both.
that guy was going to do it anyway.
Yeah, better to accelerate it.
Accelerate it, and also, like, if you are committing to a journey of self-growth, like, you're committed.
Then
know,
you're
like,
committing to the journey of self-growth.
Exactly. And
it's going to look a certain way.
And it will change everything in your life, which means change.
And so you have to be willing to face that.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, you can't revert to stuffing it away, because that's, once you've accessed it,
yeah,
it's yours.
And I think that's when, I hate to say bad things happen, but once you see something, you can't unsee it in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're willing to go to the depth of your subconscious, the depth of your heart, to open your mind, body, to reconnect to some sentience of spirit, and trust that whatever is hiding in there is ready to come up and out, there you are.
So what's been the most maybe profound experience that you've had in your journey? Because you've had, close to 20,
more.
maybe more. And then you've experimented with around 5 modalities.
Yeah.
What's been the one that's really been the most transformative?
Well, so just like full context, after this first experience, because I was awakened and nothing was clear, nothing made sense. It was like this toad was active in me. 5 days later, I was invited to like a group ceremony with 24 people in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, to do a journey with MDMA and psilocybin. So MDMA, people know, is like a club drug. In this context, it's a heart opener. So it softens so that you can really feel safe. And once you feel safe, whatever's ready to come out and out will. So MDMA is also in stage 3 trials for the treatment of PTSD. A lot of the studies have been done with war veterans. So if they've experienced, all of that trauma, it's shown like healing, I think 89+%, maybe higher. And the same with trauma survivors of, sexual assault, et cetera. All these different modalities. So MDMA is really being like heavily lauded. So 5 days later, I went to show up to this journey. I'd never taken MDMA, even recreationally, never done mushrooms. All I knew was that something was guiding me and I was supposed to show up. And there was so much fear in me, and yet I just said yes. So I got there, and right before, the shaman gives everyone a different dose. I was afraid because like my yoga mat was next to all these people and everyone knew each other. It felt like there was a community, and I was doing drugs that I'd never done. Mm-hmm. I was there for whatever reason. I was there without knowing. And I was alone, in this.
Yeah. And coming off of the God molecule, this is a rebirth in a sense. So becoming vulnerable again in that way 5 days later, I admire your courage and bravery. I would have faced everything, challenge accepted, but I definitely would have gone in a cave.
Yeah. And in that too, it was like, here's the thing. I had no other option. Something very deep in me was screaming, like, not even it's time, but like, this isn't working. Something's not working. And what I saw plant medicine as was potentially a way to understand why.
Wow.
And because I had very little information and almost no context, this idea of ignorance is bliss really served me.
Okay.
Because I just showed up. I didn't research. I just trusted if I was supposed to be there, I was there. And so when I got my dose, I went to the restroom really quickly before I laid down, and I hadn't taken the medicine yet. And I saw myself in the mirror for the first time in my life as a 33-year-old woman. And the same voice that I had heard of, like, go smoke toad or whatever, sort of. And it was also the first time I think I had ever really heard that voice out loud. All it said was, Olivia, you're beautiful. No matter what happens tonight, remember that you're beautiful. And it was a voice that was my intuition or God or both. It both scared me, and it was like, okay.
And you leaped.
And I leaped. And to the extent that, like, there was a whole ceremony, and then the guy goes, take the medicine. And I literally took the medicine. And he goes, put it in your right hand, hold it to your heart. And I'm like, whoop.
What happens if you worked ahead?
I was just like, if I'm in, I'm in.
Yeah, let's get this show on the road.
Totally. So 5 days after I smoked toad for this ego death, I went into the ceremony. And once, anxiety started to come up because there's this stuff in me and I'm feeling all these things. And I, again, had to kind of talk myself out of that fear. And right at the surface was, he raped you. You were 17.
Oh, no.
And I saw, it wasn't a memory as much as it was a dream I had woken up from many, many times of me in a shower at a party in high school with no pants on, dead.
I'm so sorry. That had to have been so scary. How did you, I guess, integrate that experience surfacing? Because that is a very kind of scary thing to anticipate potentially for people, right? Is that a memory that you may not be equipped with the necessary tools at that time to face it? What did you do in that moment?
It's interesting when you put it like that. I didn't have any tools except the tools that I had trained my life to get there for. So, I was a wellness professional who every day woke up, ran, put her gloves on, and fought whatever fight was in me.
Wow.
And it was same, my class was that 9 rounds in a heavy bag, no breaks in life, gloves off, find your yoga mat, and reconnect to your heart. Slow down. And so I didn't have formal tools, never really had been to talk therapy, didn't think I had anything to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So this memory surfaced. What was scary was I was alone in a room of strangers. This was a ceremony that started at 5. It was 3:00 in the morning when it ended. When this came to my, consciousness, I didn't have anyone to go talk to. And in real life, I didn't have anyone to really go call and said, hey, I did drugs last night all night. And I remembered that, my friend's father from high school raped me at a party and left me for dead in a shower. And because of that experience, I dated someone next that was like a doppelganger of him.
Wow. Reflecting that experience
Exactly.
back.
It was my body always went back to the trauma. So, I was scared out of my mind. I was frozen more than I was before. I was so afraid to get in an Uber. The Uber showed up at 3:00 in the morning, the same car this guy drove. Everything about me was shocked, traumatized, re-traumatized. So, how do you integrate that? The next day broken. Mm-hmm. I called my best friend who knew I was there. I walked up Spring Street past Balthazar to get to my studio because I lived West Soho, and I just walked up Spring and hysterically crying, hoping I didn't see anyone. It was Sunday morning. Hadn't slept all night, and I was on my way to go put on my gloves to go back to go feel something get back in my body.
Wow.
Being so frozen. And I remember the sun just beating down on me just as I passed at Balthazar, and I looked up through so many tears, and I just said, please God, please help me. Just please help me. And I rounded the bend on Lafayette, and someone tapped me on the shoulder, and it was the shaman from the night before.
Oh my gosh.
And I just fell into his arms.
That is incredible.
And it was if I didn't believe in God to that moment, it was full body chills. It was just the most tangible proof I could have ever had.
And you were held.
I was held.
That's what you needed.
And he sat with me, and we spoke and gave me his number, whatever else. And it, I was in denial. What if this isn't true? Because, this is, stages of grief. The first, of course, is denial.
Yeah.
And we spoke, and I got up, and I walked to my studio, and I greeted the door as I did for years prior, and on the door it said, everything you need is inside. And I had lived my whole life externally, and it was just that door. I didn't even write, God wrote those words. And every day when I showed up to take a picture, he was reminding Olivia, baby girl, look inside, look inside, look inside.
And now you could see and you could hear. Wow.
Yeah. And
You are just
So-
so incredible. I mean, I hope
thank
you know
you.
that.
I don't thank you. I thank you. I do receive that. And I also receive and know that like life can feel so daunting. And I think as someone who's always been a spiritual person, not necessarily a religious person, the only thing I know to be true, I probably know more things, but it's that like God exists and Mother Nature is holding you, and everything about this greater power wants to bring you back to love, wants to bring you what you want, wants to see you flourish. And this was the greatest gift I was given, was not just one experiencing one assault at 17. What happens in this journey is what's at the surface comes first. That became 2.5 years of almost every month going into the depths of hell to remember being raped by a cab driver, being raped by fraternity, like my body just pillaged because I never lived in my body. And it then traced me back to an experience at 6 years old when my voice was taken, my body was taken, and I'm 37. So for 30 years of my life, I was dead inside.
Wow.
And yet, the greatest gift I could have ever been given was a new lease on life. And it was through the darkest depths and the rockiest terrain and so much pain and isolation and relationships changing and the way I view everything changing. And what it gave me was, it gave me not just back my life, but trauma, experience, hardship, life, it creates more space between you and your heart. What this did was it let my heart break in a million pieces to bring me back to the love that we are all born in and with.
What I think is so powerful about what you're describing too is that you kept showing up with just relentless trust and allowing yourself to fully break so that you could, you said, create space for like more heart and love. But I think as part of that, you gained your power. You regained your power by breaking into pieces completely and resurrecting again.
And thank you for saying that too. I love this idea of like this mess to become the mosaic that we are.
Yes.
And we spoke earlier today, and from the moment I met you, I felt such a depth through such a bright light. And I think it's because in your own way, you've transversed whatever lifetimes to understand yourself at a deeper level. Yeah. Through a whole lot of pain.
Whole lot of pain and, finding forgiveness and in between. And letting it be messy, I think, is key. Yeah. And being okay with that for a time. We're not perfect.
No.
And the perfectionism curse is just not even worth exploring. Go run toward the God molecule first.
Yeah, it's so funny. Thank you for reminding me of that, because, I've gained so much awareness about self, about others, and so much knowledge about, plant medicine and healing and trauma and the body and reconnecting, because it wasn't, Gabor Mate says it beautifully, it's not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result. Because I separated from myself at such a young age, I also separated from my family, from anyone that tried to come close to me, because at that moment I wasn't worthy of love, I wasn't worthy of anything, and I became this perfectionist you're talking about because I thought I had to do anything and everything to receive the love that I also would never receive because I wasn't worthy of.
Right, and you couldn't open yourself up enough to feel it and let it come in.
I was broken, I was dirty. All, because other people's pain was put on me, and I became the receptacle for it. And I also was strong enough to carry it for so long,
And recover from it too. Totally. That same strength showed back up for you.
That's the process of healing, is the strength in carrying it, and then the softness knowing when you're safe enough to let it go, when you've resurrected in a way.
So you're sitting here today. You've had these incredible experiences, and have covered just a glimpse of what might come from exploring some of these modalities. You are feeling complete. You emanate a wholeness, right, about you. Would you say that the life that you led before, would you ever return back to it?
It's so funny as I like sit here and I'm like, maybe I should move back to New York. These thoughts, but I don't even think it would be possible because I've always been me, but me with a shield, me with a guardrail, me with a cage around my heart, every relationship I've had to date, friendship, family, romantic, has been a reflection of where I've been at the time. And I think that's where we get it wrong. We can blame other people for our experience or for what's going on or right or wrong in our lives. But there is an element of taking responsibility for how you're showing up in the world. And
Absolutely.
because I didn't have a clear lens, I could never see myself clearly. And so I saw through a lens of pain. So my mission was and is now to rid first myself of the pain so I could become the love I was always seeking, and then to emanate that so people can see that it's possible. But it's not beyond me that like my business, Box and Flow, my former business, it was never about boxing or yoga. It was always about, inspiration and empowerment through energy, breath, movement, and music. Most people won't go do plant medicine. This stuff is scary. I get it. They will put on a pair of gloves and face their fight. And there was only one rule in the entire experience, and it was never drop your hands, never give up on yourself.
Wow.
And I was teaching what I needed to learn because every time I showed up and every time I was brought deeper into the depths, and also I showed up and I was like, show me love, show me light, I'm done, I'm ready. It would just show me more darkness to like a point where a year ago, of all my experiences, I had, and this was nothing to do with plant medicine, except that I was at the psychedelic convention in Denver. Yes,
fair enough.
But
it was
stone
in
cold
the air.
sober.
Yeah.
But wanting to research and understand this work so I could integrate it in my practice. I had a personal experience that left me near lifeless, not by doing anything, but took so much from me, like an experience that wanted to silence my truth.
Yeah.
And it left me in fetal position on my floor of my bedroom, the same bedroom where I did so much healing, wondering why I was still here.
Do you think that
and also in every movie, everything's good, and then all of a sudden there's like one final blow. This was the blow I never expected. And what the test did was, and I'm still working through it, I believe, because I have a very powerful story. I've been working on a book for some time and also using this voice that was taken. And yet, I think I still I haven't fully stepped into this knowing that not only does my story have purpose and meaning, but it's no longer for me. So where I am now is like from a year ago, really taking it back, and people will react however they want to react. It's no longer about me. I've cleared myself of whatever truth that I've needed to clear myself of. And do I believe that that was like the final darkness? I would love to think so. And at the same time, like, life is tricky. There's heartbreak and heartache and curveballs around the corner. What I know now is that I have the tools, and that just as I taught my class, I taught myself, and I proved it to myself, like, even if I was like close at that moment, like, I will never drop my hands. I will never give up on myself. And every part of me, 6, 13, 17, 21, 24, all these parts of me that need me still, like, I got my own back. And I didn't abandon them. They're not like versions of me. They are right here with me. And when they show up, I know how to say, like, you're good, you're okay, you're safe. Like, and that's the reparenting process and the healing process. But,
well, you no longer have to run.
Right. Run. And in the same time, too, like, if you're dealing with PTSD, if you experience some trauma, like, the coolest part about this was that, like, I literally woke up every day and ran like someone was chasing me at 5 a.m. I would be on a date and, like, and this is in my book, but it was a pattern, like, third date, like, is the third date rule thing.
Time
like,
to run.
Like, literally. And I would. And that was, like, sort of what spiraled this whole thing. I was always running, and now
I had no idea.
Yeah, no, like, the urge,
funny.
it's like such an interesting thing, and it's like
it's symbolic.
It's symbolic, and it was so real. Like, post-traumatic stress disorder, I never even admitted I suffered from it. I didn't know what it was because I didn't have I need to stress this. I had no memory of my past. Not one. Not one.
You were having to cope by disassociating with your reality.
And I was to the extent that my entire reality was dissociated. I was, a professional doing many things, and then a wellness professional running studios. Everything felt like the world was ending. Nothing was safe. No one was safe. I was always like this. And yet, like,
your nervous system was on overdrive.
Constantly.
So today you don't at least come across in that way. And you've transformed out of this journey using plant medicine, but also by facing some just intense memories that had been removed from your I don't know, memory bank, I guess. But it's one that was always with you. It was why you behaved externally.
Completely.
In the way that you did.
And this is like the plant medicine. The power of it is it allows you to revisit these memories. The work, the therapy is every moment in between. So it gives you context as to why, why I didn't like dogs, why I dated these people, like literally what happened to me. It showed
present
me
day
what happened to me.
context.
Yeah. And it showed me past memories. It let me go into all of 30 years of repression. But why I'm sitting here is because I woke up every day from that. I picked myself off the floor. I found meditation practice to clear my mind. I found journal practice to connect to my heart. And I began doing, whether it was plant medicine to clear or body work, massage work, all different modalities to clean and clear this energetic vessel so that I could connect to a higher power. And why I'm still here again is because I learned that I wasn't what happened to me, and that to keep me on like the straight and narrow, if you will, I did the same things I always did. I woke up and I moved my body. I sweat to get rid of whatever anxiety. Like the work doesn't stop when you do the medicine or whatever. The bald guy who shaved his head, shaved his balls, runs off to the sunset.
This poor guy, he is, by the way, figurative. However, whomever you can imagine.
If he doesn't do the work
like
to integrate it, he'll always be running. So plant medicine, it's so beautiful, so magical, and can be dangerous. If it is not integrated properly, it can open a whole can of worms. I don't want to say I got lucky. I want to say that I trained my whole life to prepare me to sit with myself, tolerate my own company, learn to love myself, not less than because of all of this, but because of all of this.
Yeah. So if someone were wanting to explore this as a path for themselves, what would you say is kind of the first step that they should take? Let's say they're, for example, exploring yoga and it's starting to open up, some emotional pathways or some things that they feel are unsorted. They have to know where to go, right? If this is something that they're interested in.
And yoga is a beautiful gateway because it really is the mind, body, breath connection. You don't need to do psychedelics to access. You can access these parts of self in meditation, in lucid dreaming, in breath work, in anything that changes your state.
Right.
But if you're interested in this work, the first thing I would say is create the intention for change. And it is said that the medicine calls you when you're ready. And so when you open up to it, it will find you. Can you search for it? You can do all the things. There's a type A aspect of like doing all the things, like to try and fix and change something. There's a mysticism involved in this work that I believe you can put it out, answer the call, and it will show up for you without you
when
needing
it's
to
ready.
Force it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you had to narrow down maybe the 3 steps in getting to a place where you're open and receiving the call, what would those look like?
First, I would say set the intention to
do yoga.
Yeah.
Set the intention.
Totally.
Is it journaling? Is it?
It's anything that can clear your body, clear your mind, open your heart. So probably all the things you don't want to do that involve you tolerating your own company.
Okay.
So if you like to work out and do high intensity stuff and run, slow down and hold a warrior 2 for 3 minutes and see how much you want to run away.
Okay.
If you can't stand journaling, start with 2 sentences a day. If meditation, like, drives you crazy, 5 minutes. It's like just tiptoeing, etc. Because if you go to the medicine, people just fly down to Peru to an ayahuasca retreat. They've never journaled before. You're going to blow your whole mind open, and it would be very shocking to me that you've created a vessel that can hold all of that energy.
Right. You need to come prepared.
In some way. So first, get grounded, in whatever this looks like for you, to create some sort of relationship with yourself if you don't have one. This isn't a quick fix. It's actually a long road.
Mm-hmm.
Second, I would say everything about where you do, what you do, choose to do needs to be held in a safe container. What does that look like? It looks like someone you can trust, that holds space, that has done this work, someone that you're comfortable with, so that there's no performative nature, because you're going in a subconscious state and you want to feel really safe, held, protected, guided, to the extent that if something comes up, that person is there to hold you in it and through it. And to help you after integrate it. A lot of ceremonies now, it's come here for 2 days and then good luck.
You're on your own.
Right. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That's
reckless.
Absolutely. Third, I would say people love to, because I do this work, and
mm-hmm.
It's such a gift for me to serve not just the medicine, but also the integration pre and then post. With that, a lot of people come to me to ask about where they should start. What molecule should they start with? I don't like to give a pointed answer because every body is different. Ketamine is legal. You can do that in a doctor's office, supervised. Ask yourself if you want to be in a doctor's office, white coat, doing this. That might feel safer to you. It might not. You have to check in, and that can be done in the moments of quiet in between, when you sort of feel into, okay, well, mushrooms are from the earth. Do you feel called to that? Some people say start with ayahuasca. I would never say that. That is so intense and so heavy. I'll go back to this MDMA reference, stage 3 trials for PTSD. What
sounds
MDMA
like a
does,
good place to start, honestly,
it really,
for softening.
Yeah, it's almost like bumpers in
bowling.
In bowling,
love bowling.
Right, and it because you're still in your ego a little bit, so
mm-hmm.
you're still here, and so that can get confusing potentially, but you're flooded with so much love, so much dopamine, so much serotonin, that it is just this direct, heartfelt, centered connection to source. And that's when things start to come out. And I love to say too, this is just a side note, MDMA for couples therapy, it is really beautiful. You could fall in love again. It also can be quite confusing. I've heard people do it on a second date and they start dating for 6. Just don't. These are not
quite
toys.
Intense second date, by the way.
Yes,
so
they are not toys. It's if you want. It's like anything else. If you go to therapy with intention, or dinner, just with the intention to have fun, be very thoughtful about why you're doing this, what you're doing, who you're doing it with. I've never done recreational, go to an MDMA, and I'm not saying I won't, because now I feel very safe with this medicine
and with yourself
and with myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it is so sacred, and if you see it as sacred, every experience you have will be sacred. It's no different than us having this conversation. It's sacred.
Absolutely.
For both, and you can feel it.
And I think with plant medicine, there's this ancestral wisdom that is integrated inside of the molecule. So
it has its own consciousness.
Yeah.
And you really want to be open enough to merge with that, so that you can allow yourself to surrender into what it is that it wants to bring out of you.
And do you feel like you're living your purpose now?
It's a tricky question. My purpose is a life mission. And I believe that, the book that I'm working on, the talking, the speaking that I want to get into, the space I want to hold, it's so much bigger than me. But first I had to understand me. So I find that what I'm stepping into is the capacity to hold a collective pain that I've felt for so long. And now I know why. And I also know that there is very little I haven't seen, felt, heard, experienced. And so I come with open heart, clear eyes, that I can support people in both the holding of it and letting it go.
And save lives. Truly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful work. And
Thank
you for being vulnerable enough to share your story and to talk about this topic is a little bit taboo, or at least in, here in the South.
Right. Yeah.
And so I appreciate you, coming forward and sharing that level of detail and walking us through those experiences. I just commend you for your bravery and your courage and your love and your showing up completely in it.
I always say magic cannot occur in the presence of expectation.
So true.
And everything I've experienced, good, bad, ugly, has literally been filled with an element of so much magic. And all of this has taught me that like love exists. I'm single, but love exists. Love is
not for
so
long
pure.
after this episode.
I mean, that and like, but to say that like, I've never felt so much love and so much magic. And when you open up to that expansiveness, even though it might first, bring you through so much darkness and muck and shit and whatever else. I mean, as we both know.
No mud, no lotus.
There you go. It's like, yeah, I feel really grateful that I was chosen for this journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we find you? I mean, I know, but can you tell our listeners?
Yes, so my website is liveyoung.co, and I do one-on-one sessions, like I said, big sessions, little sessions, all of that, all work around, finding a more heartfelt connection to yourself through all the things. So it isn't therapy. I'm not a therapist, and yet I speak in many tongues through many lives. You can also find me on Instagram at Live Young, and I have a podcast called the Live Young Podcast. And the irony is I didn't know my name was Liv until I was like 30. I always went by Olivia. And so Live Young to me is this joie de vivre, this idea of being alive through the lens of learning yourself to love yourself. And I think I didn't even reference that was my name because I wasn't yet on that path.
You weren't alive yet.
Yeah, I wasn't.
So live captures your second life.
Exactly.
That you're living today.
Yeah.
Ooh, I can't wait to have you back so we can traverse to the land of Cleopatra. I feel like you were.
I mean, all of it. I feel like you might have been Marie Antoinette.
Oh, yes. I like that. She was intellectual, but a little, sexy. At the wrong time.
Take it.
I love embodying both. So greatest compliment of my life. Thank you. Okay. You heard it here first. Ayahuasca, 5-MeO-DMT.
Cambo is another one.
Cambo.
Psilocybin,
MDMA, the heart one.
Yeah.
Any modality that you have been drawn to or has spoken to you is, as long as it's approached in the right way and you are prepared emotionally to face whatever surfaces and you have good people and the necessary tools around you to integrate that experience. It is safe, it is scientifically backed, and I'm well on my way to trying at least some version of this. I feel ready. We always close with, I shaved my vag for this. And so that is the question of the day. Did you shave your vag for this?
Oh, you know what? Partially.
You're like, in my past life, I did.
Yeah. No, partially. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be afraid to,
That's healthy.
Yeah.
That's healthy. You've learned balance.